Hey guys, this is Echo Soundworks, and we're gonna be doing a cool video this time around, a unique one. We're gonna be doing a community tip and trick video. So last week on Facebook, I posted a question and I asked you guys what your top 3 production tip and tricks are. And we probably got around 50 people commenting back, and some of them were really cool ideas. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to take the ones that came up often and kind of compile a list into kind of like this Echo Soundworks community tip and trick tutorial video. Now, at the end of this video, I'm even gonna check out 2 concepts that I've never used in my mixes, but when I read the idea in your guys' post, I was like, wow, I wanna try those things out. So let's just dive right in. All right, so the number 1 tip and trick that came up over 10 times in this thread was using good samples and choosing your sounds wisely / carefully. So I am so pumped that this was one of the most popular tip and tricks from you guys, because that's the whole reason I got into sound design. It's the whole reason I started Echo Soundworks. When I was younger, I would hear other people's productions and I'd be like, well, wait, mine's the same chord progression. Like it should sound in that ballpark. I was comparing it to, you know, pro productions, all that sort of stuff. And as I grew in my production journey, I realized that not all sounds are created equal, not all samples are created equally. If you start with a sound that's a B or a B+, mixing it should be able to take it to an A or an A-, or maybe even an A+, right? Mixing in effects. Well, if you start with a sound that's a C or a D, mixing is only ever gonna get to like a C+ B level, right? So that's kind of how I looked at it, and that's why I started Echo Soundworks. So, choosing your sounds carefully. A lot of you guys posted that comment. I couldn't agree more. Starting at this threshold when you're starting to produce and mix in terms of sound quality is always better than starting down here and then thinking that you can fix it in the mix. All right, the second most common tip and trick that you guys offered up was sidechain. So I'm kind of lumping multiple ideas of sidechain into this one section of the video. Basically, sidechain is cool. I mean, it's of incredible importance to any type of electronic music, whether it's, you know, EDM, any subgenre of EDM, pop, hip hop. But outside of just using it to get your bass and your kick to fit and sit together nicely, a lot of you guys are saying try sidechaining to a different element in the track besides the kick, right? And maybe group it into subgroups. So maybe your low-end instruments, well, those are, of course, gonna be sidechained to the kick. Well, then maybe try on your chords or your lead or a pluck, sidechaining that to like a percussive sound, the snare, the hi-hats. A lot of you guys are like, that can create a really cool vibe, really cool syncopation. So maybe if you're kind of struggling in your track, your production, and it just doesn't have enough movement, doesn't have enough bounce, try sidechaining some stuff not to the kick, to different elements in the track. So you get this nice push and pull, this kind of, you know, this nice release from the tension that's always caused by the kick and the snare. So the third most common tip and trick that you guys posted was saturation. So saturation is something that I think a lot of producers and DJs, engineers, artists, they have this kind of like aha moment, right? They throw it on once and it sounds really good, and then they're like, oh, I should be using this. Well, I would say I saturate in a track or a sound set demo. I would say that there's saturation probably on at least 50% of every track. And I will usually always saturate a drum, bass, vocals, but it's usually just a little bit of saturation. It's not a lot unless it's like a really aggressive lead or really aggressive bass, but saturation can really help fill out a mix. It can add some harmonics, it can add some nice high end, it adds warmth in a very, you know, otherwise potentially sterile and digital world. It is a cool thing. Now, in terms of saturation plugins, I asked you guys which ones you like using. FabFilter Saturn is a popular one, as well as iZotope Trash. I mainly use Saturn. I do have Trash and I use it a little bit, but those I would say are by far and away kind of the main ones. I know Soundtoys has another one as well. The fourth idea that came up a lot was creativity should trump tech. And I really like that idea. So when you start your production journey, a lot of you guys come, you know, you're musicians, or you play a guitar, you play a keyboard, right? You want to create, that's your goal. But then as you start to get into the concepts of production and mixing, there's all this tech stuff that happens, right? Whether it's the gear, it's the compressors you're using, your monitors, your headphones, your space, all this sort of technical stuff crops up. And I would agree that it's pretty hard, from the conversations I had, as a common theme, that it's pretty easy to get sucked into this tech mindset and you kind of leave the creative mindset off to the side, and it should kind of be the opposite. So a few of your guys' comments were really cool. You were saying, well, make sure that you're always thinking creativity first, tech second, because the creative side is what most of the end users, the listeners, are going to experience, right? They're going to hear your creation. They're not going to rip apart your mix, how loud your kick is, that sort of stuff. That's just what we do as producers, as engineers, as artists. We tear apart the mix, but your listeners probably aren't. All right, so shout out to Josh Reborn, because that's where we're getting this next tip and trick from. So he said, use what you have to finish something today instead of waiting for tomorrow's upgrade. I love that idea. It's so easy as a producer or an artist to think, I'll finish my EP, I'll finish my mix when I have that new guitar, I have that new microphone, I have that new mixing plugin. No, go do it now. It's like that weird Shia LaBeouf video where he's just screaming at you to do stuff. I mean, it works, right? Just go do it. You'd be surprised how always getting new mixing plugins specifically can really bog down your creative process. There's obviously a time and a place to get new sounds, new samples, new instruments, new mixing plugins, right? Because it can kind of spark creative ideas. But at the same time, if you're always having to learn a new mixing plugin, or if you're always thinking, okay, I'll finish that tomorrow when I have this, you're never gonna get anything done. So shout out to Josh, that's a great tip and trick. So this next idea came via Jay Patterson. Shout out to you, bro. This is a really cool idea. It's something that I haven't really messed around with a whole lot. And when I saw his comment, I was immediately like, damn, I gotta go do this. So I wanted to show you this in the video. Basically what he said to do is modulate or automate your stereo width, make it more narrow in the build or the breakdown of your song. So then when your drop hits, you can go back to full stereo or even stereo enhancement, and it should sound bigger. So that's what I've done in this Coda demo. So I applied it to different groups and different instruments. It's not the same. So some are at like 15% stereo width, some are at 20, some are at almost 50. It just depends. I used A1 Stereo Control by Alex Hilton. It's a free plugin. It's a really cool plugin. So if you guys need this type of plug, definitely check it out. So it's on my drum group here. Right, but the stereo width is at 58%. So you can obviously hear a difference, but it's not crazy. I applied it to the bass group as well. Right, so it's a little bit more narrow. I applied it to the keys quite a bit, and there's like a brass stab in this group as well. So if we open this up, it's at 30%. And I simply just automated that in, and we'll check that out right here. So I did it via the touch mode in Logic, because I think it's easier. Then I'll just kind of edit this. So I'm gonna do that right now. I'm gonna drag this back a pinch so it hits just a little bit sooner. But yeah, basically I'm just going to whatever percentage sounded cool. Just use my ears. We're at 30% here. And then at bar 29, when the drop hits, it goes back to 0.5, which is in A1 Stereo Control, 100% or back to full stereo. I also apply that to some of these instruments down here as well. Right, so let's listen to the whole thing and just know that at bar 21, everything gets automated back to basically 0. It's like the plugin wasn't there, it's back to full stereo. So it is a really cool effect. Again, shout out and props to Jay. All right, guys, let's go on to the next tip. So the next one comes via Nick Handslip. I hope I'm not butchering your name, man, but if I am, I'm sorry. So basically, his tip and trick was to layer in some instruments into the reverb send on your drum tracks, right? So it's a pretty common thing to do is to, well, that isn't, but it's pretty common, obviously, to put route your drum tracks through a aux or a bus send that has some reverb on it, right? Helps fill out the mix, make it a little bit more spacious. And with samples, it can help them sound a little bit more realistic. Well, I've never messed around with this in an EDM or hip hop track. I've done this once or twice in like singer-songwriter kind of acoustic rock productions. It's more common to do because if you're triggering all your drum samples in that world, a lot of times you want that like band vibe, and if bands were playing live, you'd get bleed in the studio from the mics of the drum kit and all that, right? So that's essentially what Nick said to do, and I tried it on a demo from Ashes, and it actually sounded really cool. So here are the drums. All right, so there's the snare. We have, it's going to my bus 4. All of these are going to bus 4, and it's FabFilter Pro R handling the reverb, right? So if I solo bus 4 with just the reverb right now and play it, and let me actually get the loop proper. There we go. Let's solo the bus or the aux send. Right, that's what we're working with. Well, what I did was I went down to some of the guitars here. And I'm routing that into that bus as well. And it's kind of cool. It gives it a cool vibe. I can actually hear a difference when I mute that bus or turn off the bus on the guitar track. It does help make. It's almost like it softens up the drum reverb. It makes it less noticeable on just the drums, and it's kind of on the whole track. So if you guys have never tried that technique, try it out. I thought it was pretty cool. Again, thank you, Nick, for this tip and trick.